We've got a lot of political news to get to. I guess first let's get to the new poll that's out there, showing that's it's a pretty close, at least head-to-head race, and a pretty close three-way race, unless
Yeah.
you're Wesley Hunt, who's polling at about 17%.
Yeah, and what is Wes Hunt doing? In Lubbock County, out in West Texas, are y'all seeing all of his ads, stuff on radio, social media?
You know,
Has he been running any TV there? It's been in other places. Here's a congressman from Houston who most folks don't really know that much about if they're not, from his district. He's been trying to raise his profile, of course. He's been on, these various national television programs. He was on the Bill Maher show a few weeks back. Got a lot of accolades for some of his comments there. But running all these ads, including an ad that ran in his area in Houston that looked like a campaign ad, Chad, but it was paid for from money from his office, from his official congressional office, which seemed a little weird to people. Are y'all seeing that stuff?
A little bit of it. I know he's been on the show often, and so he's trying to raise his name ID. That's for sure.
For sure. And, there are candidates in both parties at this point. I'm going to say that Wes Hunt is the one in the Republican Party, and I'm going to tease out that there's also one on the Democratic side. I'll reveal this story later. But I'll tell you the story about Wes Hunt. These two candidates, Republican and Democratic, who have been told that they are just, how do I say this? That they are amazing, and they're destined for bigger and better things by the top people in their party. And on Wes Hunt's side of this, and you may know this story, I'll go ahead and tell it. When Pete Hegseth was up for nomination as Secretary of Defense, and you remember how that was going, Chad?
Yeah.
It was really rough. Hegseth, faced all these allegations of, creating a hostile work environment, at his place of work previously, drinking on the job, and all of that. And it was getting really ugly. And Republicans, including the president, I'm told, were, pretty nervous about it. And there was some talk that at some point the nomination might be withdrawn. And I was told by sources in Houston that Congressman Hunt was called personally by the president, and he was in here, and Hunt was in Houston at home in his district. Trump called him and said, "I need you to come to Washington, suit up, and come to D.C. Because if the nomination of Hegseth was going to be withdrawn, then Trump was apparently going to walk out in the White House Rose Garden with Wesley Hunt the next day and point at him and say, 'This is my new nominee for Secretary of Defense.'" So when that kind of thing happens, I can believe that story, by the way. And here's the thing: when that kind of thing happens, as somebody who is in office, has run for office, and might run for something bigger, goes right to their head, Chad. And so you have Hunt out there promoting his potential candidacy, and just not stopping, and not also saying what he's actually doing. And so here you have this poll that shows, as you said, not great numbers for Hunt, although it's not a real campaign yet for him, though, right? But it has started to become a real campaign between Big John Cornyn and Attorney General Ken Paxton. And in that poll, they're tied, if it's just a head-to-head race, with 39% apiece. And if there's a three-way race, if Hunt gets into the race, as you said, you've got Cornyn leading the race with 32% of GOP primary voters across Texas, narrowly beating Paxton in this poll, who had 31%. So that's still almost basically neck and neck. That's within the margin of error.
Yeah.
And then Hunt was at 17% support. That we should point out that this poll was commissioned by a group that is tied to the U.S. Senate GOP leader, John Thune, who, of course, is, pulling for Cornyn. But I can believe that this race is at least tightening up. We saw those original polls earlier in the year after Paxton had announced, and he was way out front, just crushing Cornyn. But in the meantime, Cornyn started to do some things, right? He's been out there campaigning a little bit. He's been on television, at least in interviews, talking, about, his record, and, really calling out Paxton for some of his scandals and alleged scandals and all of that. You and I have talked about how some of the things that Cornyn's talking about are maybe the things that would have resonated with GOP primary voters of the past. Although I do know there are a lot of those folks who are still out there, right? I mean, there's a reason that the Attorney General, in his last reelection efforts, had to go to a runoff with George P. Bush, right? And because he didn't get an outright majority in that first round of voting, and we may see a similar kind of thing where you do have Paxton and Cornyn heading to a runoff if there are additional candidates in this race. There's a long way to go.
Scott, what about this this memo that came out? And you and I were talking about this when it first came out, and I sent out a tweet about it saying, "I don't buy this. I don't buy it." That if Paxton were the nominee, that he would tank House candidates out there in Texas.
Congressional candidates.
Yeah, I don't buy it. What do you think?
Well, I would say this, and it's hard to make any predictions about it, but we did talk previously here on the show, and I think this has been, the understanding of Republicans who were skeptical of the idea that they could even draw more congressional seats in Texas as the whole redistricting battle was playing out when the Democrats went to Chicago and to California and some other places as well to try to stall that thing. It was my reporting earlier in the year before that battle really blew up at the Capitol that our congressional delegation to Washington, the Republican delegation, wasn't necessarily for this redrawing because in doing what they did, they may be stretching some of those districts a little thin. And remember, and I mean thin for Republicans. In other words, they have to run good races. They got to raise a lot of money and all that sort of stuff to beat Democrats. And part of the reason that they're concerned is because the new districts have now been drawn based on the 2024 numbers, which, I mean, we're all in agreement on this. The Democrats just collapsed in historic fashion the way that they tried to, switch out President Biden with Vice President Harris. That they just did horribly here in Texas and all across the country. I don't expect the next election cycle in 26 to be that bad for Democrats. In fact, depending on how things go historically, the party in power in Washington, which is the Republicans right now, usually loses seats in a midterm, and this will be the second midterm for President Trump. And the only other election that we have to really compare it to would be his last midterm, which is 2018. Now, some things are going to be different, right? On the Democratic side, they have not found the equivalent of, a rock star, at least as far as the Democrats see it, in a Beto O'Rourke type candidacy. They've got Colin Allred, who of course is a very different sort of candidate. James Tallarico's out there, making some noise now as well. And I would say he's only polling. You might have seen Representative Tallarico's polling at about 6 or 7%. So I would just say Instagram followers don't equal votes. So he's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
But I would also say this, having covered races for state representative, which is the office that Tallarico holds now, and I've covered so many of those races I lost count years ago. And I have also covered statewide races in Texas for coming up on a quarter century now, and so I can say this with some authority. Running for state representative is to running for U.S. Senate in Texas. The difference between those two is the difference between running for student council and running for president of the United States. They're just nothing alike. It's so much more money, so much more focus on the races. But the U.S. Senate race, for Democrats, it's the only race that has any money in it. And that's why you saw some of those Democrats, earlier in the year coordinating, trying to figure out who was going to run for U.S. Senate. So far, we haven't even heard who's going to run for governor on the Democratic side.
Andrew White. Come on, the powerhouse, Andrew White, who couldn't defeat Lupe Valdez. Come on.
It's all happening.
Come on, Scott.
It's all happening. It's all happening.
Real quick.
Lieutenant governor, another state representative running for that. It's a little thin on the Democratic side, so we'll see what they come up with.
Then you've got Andrew White. Okay. How about this? I got about 2 minutes. Anything out there about another special session going on, or are we done?
Well, there are rumors out there. There always are rumors in Austin, and the trick at Quorum Report is trying to figure it out, which ones to pass along. I'll pass this along, that there are rumors that we could see a third special session as soon as October 15th. The middle of October, and what I'm hearing is that on the agenda potentially would be, and here's the quote that's going around as the rumor, something on property taxes No idea what that would be just yet. After the proposal on property taxes, which, as you pointed out on Twitter and on the radio, the proposal they had in that last special session really wouldn't do almost anything for anybody, but of course would rein in local governments once again. And can I just say, on property taxes, they've been trying to do it in this way since 2019, right? Doing the caps on revenue for local governments. Have people figured out yet that trying to strangle local government does not equal property tax relief? They've been doing it every session since 19, and people just still complain about their property taxes. Yeah. So we're hearing about that, and also potentially something about free speech on college campuses. This, of course, in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And, of course, you had the interview with Speaker Dustin Burrows where he was talking about those new committees that they've formed to look into that. It could be that they come up with some recommendations fairly quickly, and that's something that happens here at the end of the year rather than in the next regular session. We'll keep an eye on it.
All right. Scott, a little bit of homework for you. Until we talk next week, I want you to go out and find how many Democrats are excited about Andrew White running for governor, okay?
I'm going to do my own polling on that.
What else can people find over at quorumreport.com?
We've got all of it covered for you. What's happening with your state government in real time. If you're not signed up for our email alerts, you got to do it so you can stay in the loop. And all you got to do is go there, click free sign up, and we'll get you going. And also, you can now find Quorum Report Radio on all podcast apps. We're back in the game.
I better hear a segment on Andrew White.
You are just really on. Are you going to have him on the show?
I hope so.
You want his number? I'll get it for you. I'll call my guys in Houston.
Scott, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Chad. Talk soon.
That's Scott Braddock.